Welcome to ChatGPT, the podcast where we delve deep into issues that shape our world. I'm your host, Harry Song, and on this podcast, we bring together thought leaders to discuss a wide range of topics. So if you're interested, don't forget to follow us on Instagram. And finally, for today's discussion guest, we have Ms. Biggart to discuss about ChatGPT. Please welcome her to the podcast. And Ms. Biggart, would you like to give a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm a global studies grade 10 teacher here at KISJ. I've been teaching in total for more than 20 years, like 22 years, I think. And this is my 10th year teaching outside of the U.S., and prior to that, I taught in the U.S.
I've heard you traveled a lot around the world. Have you been to any other places that might be interesting?
I've traveled throughout a lot of Asia at this point, mostly Southeast Asia and East Asia. But I also lived and traveled a bit in Africa. I lived in Côte d'Ivoire, which is in the west coast of Africa, and while living there I did travel to Morocco. And more recently, I lived in Central America, teaching in El Salvador, where I spent not as much time traveling as I would have liked, but COVID. However, I did manage to make it to Mexico and Guatemala.
Okay, I think that would give a very wide perspective. So, moving on to questions. So it's just generally speaking, what do you think about, like, when you first heard about ChatGPT or any kind of other AIs? Was it like a positive view or more of a negative view?
Well, obviously I'm old, and I think my age very much influences sort of my perspective. I kind of almost didn't believe it when it was first described to me, and then I thought it was a bit scary, and I still have feelings about it, but I'm kind of now more fascinated than I am frightened, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's very high tech. So, so thinking back to your 20s, would you think something like this would come out in the future, or it was unexpected?
This is very unexpected, but I also didn't think that I'd be talking to my granddaughter who lives 10,000 miles away via two of us on laptops in our homes. So, we've had some, obviously, the steps towards this point, but I think AI does feel a little more like, from what I remember from the futuristic shows and movies from when I was young.
Okay. Talking about like futuristic shows, do you think the world is close to what people used to see back then?
Yeah, and I recently saw like a meme comparing what was a little cartoon that we watched as kids, and putting it side by side with like modern technology, and the comparisons. It was crazy just how close they were to predicting things like FaceTime and cars driving themselves and that sort of thing. Like when you look at like Tesla or stuff like that.
Okay, thinking back to about my memory when I first saw the meme, there were things about virtual schools. So as ChatGPT has developed so much, and that its knowledge, even the experts can't follow its data, do you think high school education would be still needed significantly as before when there's AIs that can answer world's questions?
And that's the question, right? I look at AI and I can see the benefits. I still don't know a great deal about it, but from what I know now, I can see the benefits, and it's been pointed out to me even how it can simplify some of my teacher responsibilities.
Yeah.
But I guess what I look at is knowing young people and having been one once, but always looking for shortcuts and looking how to just get something done and move on. I see it as that without some level of the structure of schools and the structure of actual education, I just worry that life would just be about shortcuts. And I guess then what it takes me to is wondering about creativity. Like, will it diminish creativity if you don't have to kind of slog through your own thoughts and problem solve? I feel like it might take away the problem solving, the creative skills, the analytic skills, some of those things that we do, of course, try to emphasize within the classroom.
So that's, I think, actually a very good point, because high school is not really all about learning academic things, but also social things too. Talking about social things, as you said, there are students who try to get some shortcuts. Do you think it's really ethical in terms of using ChatGPT for academic purposes?
I don't think it's. I mean, I feel like there are probably some areas where it's okay, but in terms of if essay writing is a skill and that we're trying to emphasize and trying to help students with, then obviously writing an essay, having ChatGPT write the essay, that's not ethical. But then again, like, as a history teacher, like I think I showed you all a book at the start of the year. Why do I need to take history class if everything is on my phone? I mean, so there is that the facts can just be found, ChatGPT or whatever. But some of the skills and the thought and I guess maybe even the appreciation for history, I think is something that ChatGPT diminishes, and it is unethical to present your work, someone else's work, as your own, and it's also doing a disservice to yourself, I think, with a reliance on it, I guess, is part of it. I mean, I don't want to read or grade essays that ChatGPT wrote. I'd rather see where students are thinking rather than that.
Okay, so it's more of ChatGPT's blocking students' personal opinions and their ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it easy for them to present an idea or an opinion, but it doesn't necessarily reflect their own thinking, and therefore, it's a dual problem in that it's unethical, but it's also doing a disservice to the student and their ability to kind of form their thoughts and opinions. And one thing I want students to be able to do is form their thoughts and opinions, because my students are the future of this country or whichever country I'm in, and I want it run by people who can think things through.
Okay, so as a global studies teacher, would you use ChatGPT as a part of your learning or teaching experience, or would you rather not use it?
Right now I'd rather not use it because I'm just not well versed in it. But what I've noticed, the professional development learning opportunities for teachers now, that's a big thing. There was just a learning conference for teachers the other day, and the one breakout room that filled up the first was using ChatGPT in the classroom. So there's now a whole new kind of area of expertise that's going to develop with teachers becoming the consultants on how to best use it in the classroom. I've talked to some teachers that have used it to write lesson plans, which I guess could be a good way to kind of, free up a teacher's time for maybe to do other things. So I think there can be, useful tools, because again, that would be a shortcut for a teacher. You'd of course have to make sure that the lesson plan reflected the capabilities of the students and what you wanted them to get out of that. But, so I do see it as having value. At the moment, though, I feel like it's the wild, wild west. It's a new frontier that I personally am not ready to jump into. But as I said, there's so many opportunities now to learn from people who are far more versed in it. And there's a few teachers here that have just played around with it so much, and I talk to them, and they're going to be the first ones, I think, to guide me in that direction.
Okay. So, as you have said, it's kind of a shortcut for teachers to use it as teacher resource. Well, there's an interesting study about AIs and their emotions. There's a study made recently about the EEG signal, which is EEG signal is just signals that human emotions make, and it's made into data, and it allows the AI to basically learn emotions. And if they come to a similar text, painting, a song, or anything, they find the EEG signal and they learn and try to mock the emotions. Well, people say that emotions were the last barriers that blocked AIs from getting over humans' jobs. Since it's so sophisticatedly mocked the emotions, have you felt any threat with your job that AI might take it one time?
If I were younger, I would really be afraid, but because of where I am at with my age, I will probably only teach for, at the most 10 more years. But if I were younger, that would be a fear. And I've recently read articles and things online about the whole emotional aspect, and about one man who, I think he got fired or something for, he kept engaging with emotional things with AI, and that was scary to me. I think the emotional part is what almost becomes more frightening. And I do see it as ultimately impacting, the role of the teacher and that kind of thing.
Okay, so it would change a lot of the world's jobs. I've heard these rumors where actually many schools in the States or anywhere else in the world, and also Korea International School, is taking only in-class work as their graded work due to ChatGPT. Would that be a solution to what ChatGPT is doing, like plagiarizing and taking shortcuts?
I think it makes sense. Let's face it, work done outside of school, there's a million different ways that you can cheat. I think ChatGPT makes it simpler. It really does simplify that. And so the trend there's been a lot of different trends in terms of grading and what, late policies and all sorts of things like that. And, the trend has been that if we really are trying to measure learning, it's most honestly done or efficiently done within the classroom, where you can see that this is a product of the students thinking and applying concepts or analysis or whatever. And so that had already been, I feel like, a discussion and a movement even prior to the advent of ChatGPT and other AI. So, I see that as inevitable in many ways. And, on some level, I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
If we're trying to make sure that students are learning and understanding concepts and whatnot, what's observable or gradable in the classroom is really more reflective.
I think that really makes sense. So there are lots, for KIS, there are lots of outside projects going on. And would you, to make it in class, would you try to get the projects to be done in class, or would it just turn into tests?
That's the big fear, because I've been in education long enough to see we've tried to move away from tests and try to, do more project-based work, which generally can't be accomplished simply in the classroom. It often is part of the homework. Rather than studying for a test, it's, continue working on your project. And that's what makes me a little bit sad, is that I feel like it's almost forcing a swing back to more test taking. And I hope that's not where we go. I like to have sort of a balance between a traditional assessment like a test and then something like a project. And when I think to even just sort of things that are meant to be fun, like the recent kind of yearbook pages that we did in our class, knowing that I try to come up with things like that are sort of fun, but even that ChatGPT could just do that rather than a student getting creative with a partner and imagining, putting themselves in this historical situation. So I guess it feels like it's ChatGPT, my worry is it's going to make students less creative, and it's pushing me to be more creative, and that I feel like that's a little bit of a challenge that I haven't worked through yet.
Okay, so it's kind of really paradoxical where high tech brings us to go back to old education systems. Well, I think that's all the questions that I've got. To wrap this up, do you have any line of advice to students who try to plagiarize using ChatGPT?
I mean, it always goes back to the same thing. And although I said I'm old, I do remember being a teenager and always looking for shortcuts. And again, what I worry is like, students are the future political leaders, the future pilots, the future engineers. And the last thing I want is the pilot of my plane being someone who never, analyzed or thought through things and just simply got by with just what was produced, somewhere in the ether or whatever. So, like everything, we've figured out how to deal with cell phones, we've figured out how to deal with technology, and I guess this is just another industrial revolution or renaissance where things happen and we have to sort it out. I just hope that AI in general doesn't kind of reduce a student's ability to think for themselves and form their opinions and become better thinkers in general.
Okay, I think that's a really good point. Well, Ms. Biggart, thank you for joining our podcast today. And to all those out there, keep Ms. Biggart's mind in mind. This was host Harry Song, and ChatGPT will come back with more interesting topics next time. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.